Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic/Known Classics. This is episode number 1483 and Doubleshot number 1377. Okay. Now, this one I'm discussing the first two Ultimate Collections for Amazing Spider-Man by J.M.S. First up, it's Volume 1. Yes, which contains issues 30 to 45. Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2. There are 3 story arcs in this trade. Yes, there are 3. And you're probably thinking, okay, now what happens in these opening issues? You might ask. Well, in the opening story arc of the series, which is from the storyline Coming Home, where we have debut of 2 important characters, one of whom becomes a recurring character throughout J.M.S.'s run for the book up until the storyline book of Ezekiel. Well, Ezekiel. Yes, he's a mysterious man who has got, spider powers. And it's also debut of the character Morlun. Yes, Morlun. The guy who was the main villain of 2 major Spider-Man crossovers over the years. The first being Spider-Man the Other, the other one being Spider-Verse, and the third being Spider-Geddon. Yep, 3 crossovers. And this opening arc is his debut. Here's a fun fact, though, when it comes to this story arc. Now, at the end of issue 34, they read through the story arc, they had the ending where that Peter Parker's hand, found out he was Spider-Man, basically holding his costume, he was basically asleep. And the very next issue was going to be what happened next. But instead, in issue 35 and issue 36, something very shocking happened. Because the events of 9/11 happened, at the same time these issues were coming out, Marvel decided only Spider-Man would have a reaction to this thing. Not any other superhero comic, just Spider-Man. Where the issue opens with the collapse of the Twin Towers. I am not kidding about that. They have issue 36 open. The cover's all black, and you open it up, and the first thing you see is Twin Towers collapsing. I'm like, really? Well, at least you have Spider-Man witnessing it. Not just saying, oh yeah, we have 2 very big buildings that collapsed, and that kind of leads to some story arcs, some minor subplots, some stuff he basically going on there. Also, in the very first story arc, before I continue with that, aside from the debut of Ezekiel and Morlun, we also have a start of a subplot in the Spider-Man comics to go at this point in time, where Peter Parker is a teacher. Yes, he is a teacher. This is something J.M.S. started, and this is kind of ended in another book. This actually was ended, I think just after Civil War 1. They actually ended this. So, I should point out though, the artist for all these issues, for 30 to 45, it's all John Romita Jr. Yep. That's who does the artwork in here. Now, let me show off here the debuts of Ezekiel. First, here's Ezekiel. That is how he's drawn by John Romita Jr. Yes, John Romita Jr., I should point out, though, he was the regular artist in the series for a pretty good period of time. Basically, when J.M.S. came on board, he didn't finally leave until, I think it was either since past, I think it was just after. Oh, if you're curious, though, first appearance of Morlun, here he is! Yes, that is Morlun, this guy with the white-looking hair. Yeah, that's how J.M.S. drew him. And here's a full appearance by him. Yes, this is what Morlun looked like back then. Yep, and of course, Spider-Man fights his opening story arc, and of course, also, his clothes get tattered. The following story arc, Revelations, it's a quite interesting story arc this is. Though this story arc does tease something happen later, of a guy getting sacrificed in a spider-like temple. Yeah, this actually teases Ezekiel's final story arc on this run. Yes. His final story arc, not J.M.S.'s final story arc. Oh no. J.M.S. managed to stay on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 more story arcs even afterwards. So in case you're curious, in the original trade paperbacks for this thing, yeah, this is pretty much the first 3 trades. Coming Home, Revelations, Till the Stars Turn Cold. Yes, that is literally that's what these issues are called. Now, one thing I should point out about these issues, you probably look at these read these issues like, wait, okay, this is the period in time when he's married Mary Jane Watson. Where the heck is Mary Jane Watson at this point in time? Well, there is an explanation for that. At this point in time, she and Peter were separated. I am not kidding about that. Some idiot at Marvel thought it was a good idea, and no, I don't know if you can blame Joe Quesada for that. I don't think so, but yeah. So of course, Ezekiel basically kind of works with Spider-Man. Of course, occasionally appearing, just like after the first story, he was mostly there as a reoccurring character. But by issue number 35, that pretty much wrapped up this story arc here. Mm-hmm. Yes. Now my guess is the plan. Like I said, the plan was Revelations. Excuse me. Yeah, that was supposed to be the very next issue. Issue 37 was supposed to be the next one because 9/11 happened. Like, here's the cover for it. That's 36 for you, and wow. Yeah, there was also a subplot involving one of his students, where he basically took not let's say a shine to her per se, someone would be sort of like big brother to her. And also in 36 you have guest appearances by the Juggernaut, Doctor Doom, the Kingpin, Magneto, and well, they're there not to cause mischief, to mourn for the dead of 9/11. Because even Doctor Doom would not pull some bullcrap like this. Oh no. He didn't think of conquering the world, but he wouldn't cause something like this. And of course, see Steve Rogers' reaction to it. And of course, Fantastic Four helping out in the relief efforts. It's a really well done. I think this issue actually won some awards when it came out. And yeah, here's the panel where you see May Parker with the costume. She does eventually talk to Peter. Peter does reveal what happened during the event Amazing Fantasy 15, where he was kind of indirectly responsible for the death of Ben Parker. Well, his uncle. Yep. Well, despite the fact 9/11 happening, basically, we still have sort of the stuff basically happening at a period of time. Now, lucky enough, basically, I was in Florida, basically, when this happened. And basically, Ground Zero is a memorial site now. It's replaced by the Freedom Towers. But there's a memorial there. I had visited the place, and there's a memorial there right now of people who have died. And believe it or not, at the time of 9/11, one of my aunt's friends was actually in one of the buildings. Yes, I didn't know who this person was, but my aunt lost a friend of hers on the day of 9/11. But moving on from that, yeah, I would basically think I'm being very tasteless when it comes to that, but I just want to move on and continue with this review instead of basically talk about somebody that I never met at all. No disrespect to my aunt, but I didn't know the person. I know she's very somber about basically when she goes to visit the 9/11 memorial site. Me personally, I'm not heavily affected by it like some people in New York are, because I don't live in New York, so it's not really bothering me very much. Meanwhile, you have it where his classmate, her student's family living in this other like crapple because apparently the building was condemned. So he also does this thing where he helps out an old man. This is, of course, just days after 9/11. And he, of course, brings him to the hospital. So he tried to get a doctor to get his attention. Like, so I gotta go. I think he's like too busy. Just look over notes. He's not working on anybody right now. So he's like he's dying. I said he's dying. Take care of him right now. Okay, right. Orderly, get orderly over here. And he gets taken care of. It just old man just happened to be nearby to the classmate. And eventually, of course, Peter and May do talk. And of course, they reveal the events of it. Of course, he does reveal to his aunt that he is in fact Spider-Man. She's had trouble basically dealing with it. And here's something quite unique about it. She basically, get this, because the fact she found out that her nephew is in fact Spider-Man, she canceled her subscription to the Daily Bugle because of Jameson's one-sided bias against Spider-Man. Yep. He actually sent emails to The Tonight Show, Oprah Winfrey, and a couple others about doing like a segment to talk to people who are affected by Spider-Man, just to prove his image. And hey, why the heck not? No problem there. And finally, by 39, we finally see that MJ is basically out in California shooting a movie. And, well, of course, she misses Peter. But, oh, yeah. So it's the Letterman Show, The Tonight Show, Larry King, Dan Rather, Oprah Winfrey. Well, this was 2001, so basically, Oprah Winfrey, she's still on the air. Larry King, I think, is still alive. I'm not sure, but it's been like 20 years. So, after talking to Jameson, and, oh, by the way, Peter has tried frequently to contact MJ, but no avail. May talks to her, no problem. If May calling, she'll talk to her, no problem. And then we have this weird subplot of this villain who's basically invisible. Well, actually, he's an astral plane. And then basically, and of course, Spider-Man gets help to fight this guy from all people. Like, okay, now who does he go get the help from the hand of this one guy? We'll also have a thing with, well, Ezekiel. Going with Ezekiel at that point. Who does he go see to take on this invisible guy? He goes to see Doctor Strange. Yep. It's one of those guest star appearances that Doctor Strange made between the Flight of Bones miniseries and, well, before Adventure Guys on ongoing series. One of those frequent guest appearances. My only guess is J.M.S. basically had throw this little two-part storyline in, and this is my personal theory. I think because either one, he wanted to, or two, he probably was requested by his editor to do a two-part story featuring Doctor Strange due to the long friendship these two have had since the 1960s. Oddly enough, this two-parter, you see that there's a trade paperback I did review a while ago where I reviewed like the various team-ups of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. Great partnership this is. And this two-parter is actually not in that trade. I don't know why. It's kind of weird. I think it should be a trade released of like all the team-ups that Spider-Man and Doctor Strange have had. It's a good amount. I would think it'd make a great series shape paperbacks. It'd be something people would be interested in, especially since we had the on-screen meeting in Avengers Infinity War. We had the on-screen meeting between the two of them, and I figured that maybe Marvel would cash in on that, but not really. Got one trade, and I would think a series shape might work too. So basically, why is visiting Doctor Strange? To have them teach him how to use the astral plane. Well, to go into the astral plane. Eventually he does. And then he beats the guy up while saving his student. And that was it for him. And eventually, beginning by 43, we finally get away. Then we have it where, oh, let's have a return of Dr. Octopus, who's got gray his hair now. Which, that's interesting, given the fact that over the years his hair has never been gray, and yet here he is with white as temples. And that's quite strange. Like, why the heck would he do that for? Yeah, the only reason why he's here, well, is because, well, there's a guy called Carlisle who tries to replace with Dr. Octopus, and then eventually he tries to kill him. Yep. And of course, Peter and May do go visit Mary Jane in California. And here's Carlisle. He does not take the name Dr. Octopus. Oh no. I don't think they gave him a name. No, I don't think they ever did. I don't think it was, I don't think they gave him the identity of Dr. Octopus III. No, I don't think. Well, they simply refer to him as simply Dr. Octopus. He's a Dr. Octopus. Yeah, and he's only in just this story arc. Yeah, that's the thing about this guy. He appears only in this 3-part story. And that's it. Because he apparently died. This, of course, was released back in 2002. Yeah. And of course, you also have it in here where Doctor Octopus and Spider are bravely fighting him, and well, then Mary Jane is saved by her co-star, which well, I think they struck up a friendship. And of course, Last Man does meet Peter. Like, hi, glad to meet you, my husband. Hey, we're separated. It's like, yep, because we're separated. Yep. Yeah, and eventually Spider-Man briefly teams with Doctor Octopus. As far as I can tell, this is the first time I can think of where they actually teamed up because the only time they teamed up was back in the '60s. That was due to Spider-Man having amnesia. But this, yeah, he actually did try to help. It was all just so he could take out Carlisle. Yeah, that was mainly the reason for that. And Carlisle is taken out by Doctor Octopus and Spider-Man and is never seen again. Yep, that's the thing when it comes to him. Yeah, you have the third guy who assumes the identity of Dr. Octopus, second being the daughter of, well, Trainer, Stuart Trainer, who basically was second Dr. Octopus. Yeah. Yeah, she was Dr. Octopus for the 1990s. Yeah, the one from the 90s was Caroline Trainer, aka Lady Dr. Octopus. Though she hasn't really appeared all that much over the years. Oh no. Like, she of course is something else altogether because she was a frequent foe in the 90s and then she popped up here and there. Like, yeah, I think her most recent appearance was actually in the most recent issue of Amazing Spider Man. That'll be interesting when I talk about the final story arc of the current Raiders run. But meanwhile, though, we have Flame 2, which contains issues 46 to 58 of Amazing Spider-Man Flame 2 and 500 to 502. I'm not going to cover 57 to 58 of Amazing Spider-Man Flame 2 and 500 to 502 because it's a happy birthday storyline. I've already discussed it. Yes, like in the case of the first Flame, this one also basically is a compendium about basically three traits: life with the spiders, unintended consequences, and of course, happy birthday. Yep. Though the very next one, just one story arc. Well, you find out about that when I get a chance to talk about it. But for these three story arcs, they're in here. Now, in the first story arc in here, we have this strange woman. This is kind of a loose follow up to the previous story arc. Actually, two stories for this one. With the whole astral plane thing, we have things start off with Peter and, of course, Doctor Strange again. Where they were this strange liquid creature who apparently knew about Peter somehow. I believe this is Dusk, if I'm not mistaken. This is Shade. Actually, her name is Shira. She, aside appearing in this story arc for her, yeah, at the appearing in this three-part story arc, she later popped up in the final two issues of Scarlet Spider, and she also appeared in the first issue of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3. And that's it. That's literally all this woman did. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there's really no reason for this all. I think because, well, they experienced this as a villain in the final two issues. Yeah, but here's something, though. Why would Marvel wait? Okay, this issue came out in 2003, this three-parter, and Scarlet Spider issue came out in 2013. Why the heck they wait 10 years to make this character? I have no idea. But she's only in just a three-parter, and then appears two other times, and that's it. Yep. Yeah, and she's able to find out where Spider-Man is because of his scent. So it gets basically after one more day to finally bring her back. Yep. I mean, aside from taking out this one character, there's not really a lot that goes on here. But basically, starting with issue 49, we kind of have started the reunion of Mary Jane and Peter Parker. We had the start of it, where they basically trying to meet up with each other, like constantly keep on the wrong flight, and eventually they do finally reunite at the end of issue 49, where they kind of in a way start reconciling with each other. Well, that is until Doctor Doom shows up. Yes, Doctor Doom. You know, he just appeared in issue 36, but that was a special dish. That was special. That was a special occasion. This is like, okay, he just comes here for a conference. Yeah, we have a suicide bomber, and it turns out one of the guards guarding him is, in fact, you have two guards with him. Like, one's got like one is mysteriously like a very weird looking face, and one of the guards turned out to be Captain America. Yes, someone Spider-Man does know. Yep. And throughout this two-parter, we actually have this trying to deal with saving the life of Doctor Doom from this suicide bomber. And this lasts throughout the entirety of issue 50. It's a fantastic issue. And I have to basically choose out Doctor Doom and I like him. And then, of course, it's like, you just don't introduce me to your friends. And then he just introduces her to Captain America. Which, as far as I can tell at this point, I think it's the first time she's ever met Captain America. Excuse me. And then, of course, like, right after that, they're basically back together. And then comes a very ridiculous story arc. Yes, how do I say it's ridiculous? Well, it involves a character known as Digger. Yes, Digger. This character is only around for this one story arc. He's here for a four-parter. Yes. Like, he's also known as Vegas 13. Yeah. Okay. Basically, thing starts out basically as a flashback to 1957. I'm like, so what? 45 years later? Okay, where these guys look like these gangsters just relaxing. All of a sudden, basically comes a shootout. And then something weird happens. Like, okay, so all these gangsters get killed, and then one of the dumbest things that these guys can do, they take all their bodies and bury them in a mass grave, and then apparently nothing happened for a long time. Then all of a sudden, it was like this bomb went off and merged all 13 bodies into this one creature known as Digger. Because Peter MJ are back known at this point. Now, this is Digger. Yep, Digger. When you read his newspaper, it's quite hilarious. Because it's so interesting. I mean, the stuff Peter Mary Jane is awesome. And, of course, his ego just there, just to chillax stuff. Yeah, where he visits a place, he sees a high-class joint. The Starlight. Takes some martinis. And he has no idea what he's talking because it's been 45 years. And he takes the call, basically beats the crap out of people. And then he eventually reads newspaper. After fighting Spider-Man, of course, deal with Ezekiel and meet with this gangster who hires Spider-Man to be his bodyguard in order to protect him from Digger. So he's like, Martin Lewis broke up? Yeah, that comedy act. Yeah. So, yeah, it turns out at the end of the storyline, the guy who hired Peter to be his bodyguard, well, also there's one really cool thing where it's like MJ is worried about him, playing his lab, and then they make out, and then they just finish having sex because, well, MJ is naked. That's all I can tell. Yes, and then of course they try dressing him by his real names. Yes. Digger, of course, is taken care of by the end of the story arc. Oh, don't worry about that. Yeah, he eventually is killed, and he's never seen again. Which, what was the whole point of creating this character? No, seriously. He is eventually killed by the end of the story arc. Which, there was really no point of this at all. Yeah. Yeah, he eventually does die. And then, of course, the guy confesses that he murdered them all. The guy who hired him basically doesn't confess. Now, okay, the student's name is Melissa Coolidge. And she's one of many students tutored by Peter. She appears in this two-parter, and she appears as a one-issue friend of Spider-Man. And she's one of those many students of his, basically, where he tries to help out. And, well, this two-parter is basically, well, when Peter basically accidentally, like, brought this guy to jail. Yeah, apparently she is related to some guy that he brought to jail. And, basically, he brings him back to his sister, and that's a two-parter. It's a really good slow down pace story arc, and Ezekiel's kind of involved with it. It just, well, doesn't really amount to much at all. No. It turns out the guy was a car thief. No, seriously, he was a freaking car thief. Yeah, that's basically how. Yeah, then Peter reunites with his sister. Oh yeah, the first student, her name is Jennifer Hartsey. Yeah, she's the first student that appears. Peter is a recurring character. Yeah, she appears for a small period of time. Appears in issue 32, 37, 40, 42, and that's it for her. Yeah, after the whole thing with Shade, he never appeared ever. That's the guy's name. His name is Shade. He, of course, appeared, well, for that opening story arc. And that was it. Mostly just some expanded stuff. Yeah, and you're probably thinking, Nick, why do you bring up characters who just appeared just for a few story arcs? Well, that's kind of the strange thing about J.M.S.'s run. It's like, okay, you bring in characters, and then they do nothing with them. No, seriously. And I do mean absolutely freaking nothing. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I always thought was kind of weird about these early issues, is they introduce really interesting characters and you just drop them after a couple issues. Yeah. And that's all I'm going to talk about when it comes to these two trades, because the rest of this trade I've already discussed because of, well, the Happy Birthday storyline, which I've already covered. Yep, so at this point in time, I'm done reviewing Volume 2 for Amazing Spider-Man. Yep, final thoughts on Volume 2 for Amazing Spider-Man. This was a very interesting volume. I mean, it only had 2 writers. Yeah, if in case you're curious, how did I review Volume 2 already? Well, the 3 volumes of Spider-Man Next Chapter, Spider-Man and Green Goblin. Now, next chapter, these 3 books contain the first 19 issues of the volume. Excuse me. Plus some issues of. Excuse me. Yeah, it was Next Chapter, which contained the first 19 issues of this volume. Plus. Yeah, it was the first 19 issues. And like a couple of the annuals, plus some issues from, well, the other series, Peter Parker Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was a relaunch of just simply Spider-Man. Yep. Yep, and there was also The Revenge of Green Goblin, the new printing edition. Yes, this one was quite unique because there's been 2 different editions of this book released. Mm-hmm. Because the first one just contained just a couple issues, just contained like Amazing Spider-Man 25, the Revenge of Green Goblin miniseries, plus Peter Parker Spider-Man 25, and that was it. New printing of this trade released in 2017, not the original trade that came out in 2002. Yeah, this book contained pretty much issues 20 to 29, the 2001 annual, and of course, well, the two issues of Peter Parker Spider-Man, 25 and 29. Yeah, and that was pretty much it when it came to that. And in the case of these two books, now, Amazing Spider-Man had only two writers, like I said. You first had Howard Mankey, who did the first 29 issues of this book, and then, of course, with issue 30 up until 58, it was J.M.S. Now, I will do a final thought of J.M.S. when I finish discussing Volume 4. Yep. Oh, if you're curious, though, who actually was the writer for Peter Parker Spider-Man at this point, I think it was Howard Mankey. Yeah, Howard Mankey basically was the original writer for this book for the start of it. And then with issue 20, it was Paul Jenkins. Yeah. Yeah, Paul Jenkins was the writer of the book up until pretty much almost till like the end of the book. Basically, he was the writer of the book, except for a few issues, or it was done by a different writer. Yeah, issues 42 to 43 done by somebody else, but majority put that book was done by two writers, also Paul Jenkins and Howard Mankey. Yep, and that pretty much, like I said, finished up Volume 2. It's a very interesting volume per se. I mean, the start of it was a really interesting time, basically reading this stuff in trade paperback form. Of course, I didn't read the stuff when it originally came out because I wasn't reading comics at that point. I didn't start reading comics until 2004. Yes, roughly 5 years after this volume started. And if you're curious, though, what story arc was being published of Amazing Spider-Man at this point? Let's see. I have to look up on here. I think it was... Well, I know it was during J.M.S's where I know that. Let's see. Because it was definitely when it was definitely in the 500s. I knew that. Let's see. It was probably, and this I'm just purely guessing at this. I think either when the Book of Ezekiel was being published, I think that was the Stork Publishing at that point. Either Book of Ezekiel or the Sins Past story arc. Yes, these two are the only ones I could think of publishing at that point when I was start reading comics. Yep. But don't worry, I'll review the other stuff soon. Yep. Though when I discuss Volume 3, it won't be very much for this one. No. Mainly because Volume 3 is probably going to cover like a lot of stuff I've covered already. Yes, it's probably going to cover some stuff I've covered already, Book of like Sins Past and Skin Deep. Those two I've already covered. Maybe it covers the 524. I don't know. It depends upon when I get a chance to read it. Okay, so that's a particular review. I might have one review tonight if I get a chance to work on book Screen 4. At that point, I'll basically conclude my thoughts on J.M.S's run for the book. Of course, when I finish with that, I would pretty much... And this is some point interesting about me and Amazing Spider-Man. Let me take a look at this just to be sure. I just really want to make sure of this. I'm just on the safe side here. I believe at that point, I would have pretty much covered everything for Amazing Spider-Man that have been published since like 1999. Yeah, since 1999. Everybody thinking, really? You covered that far back? Yes, I have. They're like, oh, good job. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yep. Yeah, there's usually some stuff I have covered, like Final Chapter. And they actually had a trade paperback collecting the entirety of the Gathering of Five story arc. And, well, and of course, well, final chapter, which those two stories led into each other. So I can't exactly say for that one if I have covered that far back for the Galleon of the Five. Like, because I think it started back in 1998, I think it was. It was like late 1998. Uh huh. Yeah. Though I think at that point that was pretty much ending all like the 90s style storytelling at that point. That's my personal guess. Though it was thanks to stuff like Gathering the Five, and it pretty much trimmed down the Spider-Man books from 4 to 2. But that's enough for another time, okay? But see you next video. Bye.